If there's anything I love stories about, it's space plants, Abe. I love a good space plant's tale. You know? Like when we get to foliage from Venus, stuff that might grow.
Floating plants that people live on.
Yeah, that's all any of us want to hear about. You know?
That's so cool.
It's so cool. Such a cool idea for an episode.
Such a cool idea.
Honestly,
and they look so cool.
They look like little thistles is what they look like.
Yeah, they do.
Yeah, but thistles
they give you
with
space blindness.
And then they cure it. They giveth and they taketh away.
Yeah, yeah.
That's right. Yeah.
I guess that it could be like how snakes work. Is that how snakes work?
Did they give blindness? I don't know what kind of
like
what kind of snakes you thinking of, Abe?
You get a snake, and then to heal yourself, you use a snake again, right? That's how venom
I don't
works.
even know what you're saying, and I'm thrilled by it. Okay. Absolutely thrilled.
Let's just move on. I think plants are snakes.
Okay, great. Now, established, that's now canonical. Glad we got that out in episode 8 of the podcast series you're listening to. See ya, Space Podboys. This is one of your intrepid hosts, Adam Ganser. I'm joined by Snake Plant Believer Boy.
Abe Epperson, shooting from the hip, baby.
I love it. So anytime it's my job to pilot, I see the glee in Abe's eyes. Because Abe's like, yes, now I finally get to fuck around like I wanted to. And I love it so much. Because I enjoy you as my co-pilot, sir, very much.
I enjoy you.
Thank you.
I appreciate you.
Yeah, I know.
And I appreciate our fans.
Yeah, me too.
They like me better than they like you.
Oh, currying for favor. What an Abe move. You can go ahead and weigh in by writing a review on Apple for this podcast and tell us which would you prefer to listen more to. You know,
who's the better host?
Yeah. Go ahead and let us know by reviewing this on Apple Podcasts.
And we'll listen. We'll have the next, depending on who wins, we will kick off the other host.
Ratios will go up and down. Sorry, Abe, you're down 10%, according to Apple.
Damn it.
Yeah. Anyway, this is the 8th episode, as I said, Waltz for Venus, which means it's time for us to ask the most important question. What planet is this? Briefly, and I'm lying when I tell you briefly, but briefly we're going to synopsize the events of Waltz for Venus. So it starts with Spike and Faye taking a shuttle into Venus to catch 3 small-time hijackers in the act. Now, we don't know that because it starts with what seems like, oh, it's a space plane. Got it. And then these 3 guys are space terrorists, you know. And we actually don't realize Spike and Faye are aboard the shuttle for a minute because they're holding everybody up. You know, it's very classic. They shoot the place up. All right, everybody hand your valuables over. And there's this guy, Rocco, who turns out is the subject of the episode, who really doesn't want to hand his package over. And he gets yelled at by one of the hijackers who, incidentally, take a wild guess what their names are, Abe.
Oh, I know what their names are.
Okay, great.
Huey, Louie, and Dewey. The ducks.
So stupid.
The tiny little duck.
I love it that they bothered with that. It's what a thrill.
Hey,
anyway,
man, last episode we had Mickey and Minnie. It's all a luscious tapestry, my friend.
People's love for those 3 ducks is astounding. It deserves its own investigation.
You're right. They don't
honestly.
deserve it.
They're not good enough to be this famous.
Yeah,
as ducks. Can I just
duck
say that?
Children can go fuck themselves.
Yeah. Thank you. Finally, taking a hard stance. Anyway,
thank you.
Rocco believes he's being yelled at by one of the 3 duck-named terrorists, but it turns out actually it's Spike wearing a sleeping mask that looks like he has open eyes on it. So already,
I love that. That's the one he chose.
Yeah,
that's what like to do japes. Do japes is what Spike does. He buys gag gifts from Spencer's Gifts.
Spencer's exists purely for Spike's travel itinerary. You know what I mean? That's exactly what it's for. So, I mean, brief question, Abe, and I think this does matter. Was Spike playing possum here, or was he actually asleep and this is just how he is?
It's unclear.
Totally
and I
unclear.
Love that Bebop does this all the time.
Correct. So Spike, through a sleep haze, annihilates 2 of the dudes. Faye shows up and annihilates the other one with a spray that knocks her out. The second time we've seen that device, by the way. First was on Ein, in the second episode, and I'm like, oh, thank you for bringing that back. Anyway, and the funny part is, finally, our bounty hunters actually collect a bounty in episode 8 of this podcast.
They win one.
They got one for 1.5 million wulongs. Okay, now this dude Rocco is really enamored with Spike. Just thinks, man, this guy's the best guy in the world. I need to learn everything from him. But also is kind of a smartass, so it's a little bit of both things. And he's like, teach me your ways, sensei, and then does a bunch of quasi-racist karate noises.
Sounds.
Yeah, please teach me your way. And Spike's like, no, I'm not going to do that. You're boring me, kid. So he's like chasing him around this, shuttle port, right? And they get outside, and that's when we discover that, that Venus is full of helium, just like every balloon prank you grew up doing to your brother or sister.
I love this.
I did too.
And I don't even know if it's true if Venus has helium. Probably. But the scene is this, like you're saying, like Spike tries to big time the guy. He's like, you're not important to me. And this guy knows more about Venus than he does. Spike's voice goes up high, making him look silly. And then Rocco gives him a pill, even though it's a false pill, like it's placebo. But he gives him some kindness, and he's like, hey, man, like I can help you out. Spike eventually relents and helps the guy. It's just like a small gesture that's taken from a big world. The idea of like you have to take these pills.
Yes.
Like what a sci-fi concept.
Love it.
Abe Horny.
Oh yeah, I knew that would get for you. Also he had a joke version that kind of worked for like half a second.
Right,
So he had like a Weasley Brothers version of this pill first.
No, he's also a frequenter of Spencer's Gifts.
Spencer's Gifts really making out clean in this episode.
They're killing it.
So Spike finally agrees to teach this kid, and this is when we get, I think, the only clear statement of Spike's like fighting style and ethos as a character, right? Which is, it's not about strength, it's not about size, it's not about intimidation, it's about being fluid like pure water, right? And so we get this like very mild training montage where the kid gets flipped by Spike, and as through his point of view, we're watching these clouds float by, right? And this like rocket flying up through the air, and we're getting Spike explaining to us, you gotta be like pure water. You gotta you gotta be flexible, right? Adaptable, and like use people's strengths against him. And it's very much like that's who he is. And it's a perfect explanation with a really cool image to describe it, which we may or may not return to. So the lessons presumably would have gone on for years. Who knows? But Rocco gets chased down by a couple of other grifters who, it turns out, we'll find out in a minute, are part of a gang he's cheated to get the object that he shoves in Spike's hands and says, keep this. Let's meet in 2 days at such and such location, and then sprints off, right? So back on the Bebop, this is when Spike and Faye or Spike's talking to Jet. Meanwhile, Faye, by the way, demanded her money immediately from the payout and was like, I'm going to go gamble all this away. That's the first thing I'm going to do. Spend all that money. It's got to go.
Love it.
Yeah.
Love it.
Well, it's really funny how much despair she lives in. You know what I mean? Just like, yeah, it's going to be gone. So what? Like better than this, which is, I guess, not doing that. Right?
Yeah, she's like, doesn't she say like better than giving it to the government? Like she's
something like that. It's very it's just funny to me how she, I don't know what she gets out of that. It's not clear to me that she enjoys gambling. She seems miserable when she does it. So it's just kind of an interesting window into her that she's like, I'm going to destroy this money the minute I can.
You don't know many gamblers, do you?
I know that. No, of course. I understand that that she's actually miserable.
I think she's a gambling addict. That's what that is.
It's pretty brutal. You know what I mean?
Yep.
It's like a through line that I don't know that it totally resolves by the end of the story.
Mm-hmm.
But in any case, this is the moment where, of course, we get information from Jet that, hey, here's a new bounty. It's those three guys you saw, but they have another gang member, and it's Rocco. Right? Why are they? And they're not up for a lot of money. They're up for a total of maybe 1 million wulongs between all of them. But because they stole something super valuable, this millions and millions of dollar plant that apparently can cure a blindness disease called Venus sickness. Okay? And that's the moment where Spike unveils what he's got, and it turns out, it's the plant. You know what I mean? And it's perfect. So Spike at this point flies off in his sword ship to investigate a ruined shuttle in the desert, where he encounters a woman who sort of holds him up at gunpoint, but is clearly blind, and yells, "Don't move!" And that's where we catch our first eye catch, right? So on the other half of it, this is when we realize the person who is holding Spike up is actually Roko's sister, and she's blind. Right, she has venous sickness, and suddenly the plot starts to kind of like lock into place. Like, oh, Roko stole this plant because he wants to heal his sister. That's the idea, and she clearly doesn't know everything about Roko. She sort of looks up to him a little bit as a brother, but knows he's into some trouble. But he always takes care of me, and that's when she shows him a music box that is very similar to the sounds of the music box we've heard in previous episodes. When Spike is imagining his own past, and he finds gray ash seeds inside the top, which are probably the most valuable piece of the gray ash plant. And also makes me ask the question, Abe, why did we need to steal the plant if we already have the seeds?
He didn't know. It was like, that's another magic moment for Spike, where he found at the top there's a hidden compartment that had the seeds in it.
But didn't Roko leave them for her? That's what I thought. I thought Roko left them for her.
Yeah, it was unclear to me.
Okay.
If that's the case, then I'm wrong totally.
I thought that Roko actually said something before he died, about
their seedlings.
Yeah, so then it's like, well, why did he steal his plant? Maybe he got him from the plant. I don't know. It's not clear. But it was already there, so why? Yeah, that part was a little. I didn't totally understand. Anyway, meanwhile, Roko has been getting away from his gang for a little bit, but then he gets busted when he finally takes a piss, which is a great warning for all of you. Be careful when you piss, because that's when your gang will catch you.
That's when
once.
They get it, yeah.
That's when they'll get
Never
you.
piss.
Never, ever piss. By the way, the boss of his gang is wearing the cyberpunkest glasses I've ever seen, and I wish they'd come back.
Cool.
I really do.
Yep. His name is Picaro.
Perfect. Thank you, Picaro. They beat him up. They burn him with a cigar. Tell us where the plant is. Roko's like, I'm not telling you shit, bro. And then, of course, the classic leverage. Well, maybe your sister will tell us, right? Very Darth Vader.
Yeah.
Especially for sister, right? so that, of course, makes him agree to lead these goons to Spike at the meeting spot where they agreed. Now, Faye, on the other hand, this whole time has been trying to track down the location of Picaro. So she's going about this bounty hunt an entirely different way. She goes into the smokiest, sleaziest bar you've ever seen, right? Shakes a dude down, shoots all these people's guns out of their hands.
So cool.
It's very cool. And it's it is vibey. It is the vibiest bar.
Yeah. It's just it's Last Boy Scout.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's the fog machine.
It's the most that you can imagine without it being
right. But how cool is it? She there's 8 guys who are like, haha,
we'll
bounty
shoot
hunter,
ya.
and they got a gun, and then she bam, 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 bam,
and
bam.
it's
She's
rad.
better than Spike.
Yeah.
It's rad.
She's as good as Spike, or whatever you want to say, right?
Yeah.
So that leads her to step 2 of her plan, which is discovering 2 men having sex with each other and shoving a gun in one of his mouth and asking him, where the hell is he? Right? Which yields no results, but is a pretty shocking twist. I
also love that she's just she's so oblivious, because she's like, what are you saying? What are you
have a gun in his mouth. What are you talking about, lady? The places she's going and the way she's doing things is I want to talk about that when we get into the next section. Okay, so this leads to a tragic and perfect final act of this story, where Spike and Roko meet. And Roko pulls a gun on Spike, realizing that he has the plant, and he's sort of give it over.
I found out what the plan is, and he's like, if you know it's super expensive, you're a bounty hunter.
Hand it over.
This.
Right. You're trying to use me for my money.
You're not going to steal this from me.
Right. And Spike does let him have it. That leads to an ambush from the cyberpunks. And, we have ourselves a regular shootout, and there's this great moment where one of them charges Roko, and he executes a fluid-like water, jujitsu throw on this guy, which sort of knocks him out.
He learned.
Yeah, he learned.
The student.
And it was great, and he looks he's got this, proud expression in his face, looking for approval at Spike right as he gets shot through the chest. And it's like, it is gut-wrenching.
Heartbreaking.
Yeah, it really is. It's like, oh, man.
He's like a little brother who's like, I did good, right?
Did it. Bam.
Brother. And he's like, yeah, he thumbs, you did it, buddy.
Yeah, you did it, buddy. But
that's when you kill the child.
Yeah. That's how drama works. Kill the child right at the thumbs up.
Yes.
In any case, Rocco has a one last minute kind of exchange of details about the I want to say he talks about the seeds at that point with Spike. But maybe that's not when it happens. It happens at this scene, and Spike can't save him. He's like, "Hey, hold on, we'll get you a doctor." And Spike runs off right as Rocco says, "If we'd met earlier, would we have been friends?" And dies. And there's this really great shot of him, like a wide, where he's dead on the ground. There's smoke drifting up, like almost like his body, or like his soul is leaving his body. It's pretty cool.
Long-standing tradition in Bebop to show kind of the quietest moments with the widest frames and with little movement as possible.
Really good.
Which I think harkens to like David Lean and Lawrence of Arabia and stuff like that. It's like the stillness of violence.
And we end with Spike visiting Stella in the hospital after she's about to undergo surgery to repair her eyesight, and we learn, Rocco came through with the seeds and with some money, and she's getting the surgery. Why hasn't he been to visit me? And Spike says nothing, but she reaches over and feels the truth on his face. He's dead, right? And she says, "I never saw him with my own eyes. Was he really what I thought?" And Spike's like, "He's everything you thought, right? He was a great guy, a terrific guy." And then as Spike walks outside to buy an apple, a spore that was responsible for Stella's blindness, they all begin to fall, like sort of like dandelion seeds from the sky in this really beautiful ending to a tragic tale, which brings us to our next segment.
Well done, sir.
Thank you. I think it's time to push the sky, Abe. Well, since I've been yakking for 20 minutes now, you want to lead off and tell us some stuff you saw?
Yes, absolutely. And I want to unpick one sequence or pick apart one sequence, which I'm sorry if you wanted to talk about this one too. I think it will branch into themes.
Is it phase?
No, actually, I think it's the one that I think is probably most famous for because of how loud it is in terms of like the ethos of Spike. It's the only time we really get to see like what he thinks about his own fighting. So obviously it's the Venus exterior sequences, the Bruce Lee sequences, I think of it, the water scene. And
it's great.
I think it was, so Watanabe had talked about for a long time, he wanted Spike to be a master. He thinks that's interesting. I think I know why, which is that like you take this guy once again with that death wish and you're like, he has to be responsible for someone. That's fun. That's dramatic. And he's right. So he wanted to take that well-trodden, like someone asking to be a pupil, which is, if you've seen Ip Man, like if like there's a lot of like even in Chinese culture, like a ton of like with Wing Chun movies, which is what Bruce Lee would practice, like this well-trodden both Japanese and Chinese character work with, someone asking to be a pupil. So we get that as kind of the motivating factor of why the scene exists. But I also love that the way they kind of posit it in the writing is that he uses others' strengths to be a weakness. By being formless, you take whatever form they're doing and you just try to reflect it again, like find the weakness of it, utilize those strengths and turn it on itself. That's what water will do by filling up a cup, however, it'll take the shape
whatever
of whatever
shape that
it's
cup
inside
is.
it.
Yeah.
Right. And you mentioned this shot, which I think is one of the coolest world building shots in all of Bebop, which, and you picked it apart like beautifully, but I want to add a few more things about when Rocco's on his back and he looks at the fucking awesome otherworldly what seem to be clouds when you first look at them, because you haven't seen that there's this lore that is they're floating plants that people live on. And as you mentioned, there's a rocket blasting in atmosphere. Why is that moment so important during the lessons? Like when he flips Rocco over and he's like, buddy, that's how it works. Why is that moment? What is the content of that shot saying about that scene? And it's perfect scene work to me because the shot feels like it's absolutely screaming at you adaptation to diverse adversities, right? That's what makes space so hard. That's what makes all these planets unique. They come with their own weird strengths and weaknesses, and your adaptability and the ability, and just look no farther than the image of, that rocket going into atmosphere. That is human ambition, is it not? So it's also consistent with like the journey that he's on, because his problem is that he's stuck like a rock. And I know we'll talk kind of more about this later, so I'll leave it open. But I think it's interesting that his dancing style, his fighting style, is to be like water. And I think that there's 3 important things that this scene elucidates by just choosing that one shot, which is that we get some form of closure, that he relents, that he's like, in the end of the story, he's going to be someone who actually makes a choice and becomes formless a little bit, because right now he's not actually formless. 2, his wider death wish is like why it pans out the way it does. He never seems to become formless until the very end. But most importantly, number 3, all the music, all the things that he's talking about, they're applicable down the line to like the shot selection, to what he's talking about, to the references that he's talking about, which, I want to talk about one specific big reference this show makes in this episode, but he's describing jazz, baby, like being formless. Come on, form and content tied together. It's something that Bebop is so good at. Abe Horny.
Oh, good. Yeah, I'm so glad to hear that.
I love that shot. That shot says everything about the episode.
Too. It was very, for a filmmaker, it's a loud shot, because you're like, wow, this is a bold choice to be on this shot for this dialogue instead of on them. Right at that
moment.
Yeah.
Where Rocco learns, because as we cut to later, he's like, oh, I get it.
Not only that, but it's not Spike's point of view. It's a different person's point of view, which you don't normally get. So, the thing I wanted to talk about is actually much more surface level than yours, and I'm glad that you did such great analytical work. And that is, I love how this set of sequences where they're both tracking down Picaro tells you the 2 different philosophies of these bounty hunters.
Hell yeah.
Right? So Spike, and this is true throughout the series, Spike never seems to have a plan, and the first time you watch the show, you're like, so he's kind of magic, right? He discovers stuff by magic. Or sometimes because he's, a few steps ahead.
Sometimes, yeah.
Yeah. But I've realized the more I've watched it, that this episode explains why it always works out for him. And it's that it's a mixture of curiosity and compassion mixed with that flexibility. That's the stuff that always gets him to what he needs to resolve these conflicts. Most of the time, he will find a connection with somebody. He'll see something in somebody that he instantly understands and can read past all the levels of protection and knows enough to know this is the way to get to what I want, right? And it's every single episode you'll have Spike connects to some person who's in the middle of this crime somehow, and they share a moment. And that moment is where they understand each other. And that moment of understanding is how Spike navigates the whole rest of this crime, right? Or this bounty. And most of the time, those people will share something in common with him that you can actually see as part of his backstory, right? Like maybe they remind him of Julia. Maybe they remind him of, the people that he lost in the fight when he left the gang. Maybe they remind him of himself when he was younger. There's always some connecting point that actually is fairly clear and easy to map out, that he understands them, and therefore it leads him where he needs to go. Now contrast that with Faye. Faye operates entirely by force. Everything she does is force. Every gesture she makes is force. She never at any point tries to schmooze her way into things. It's always by shoving a gun in your mouth or by like
breaking down a wall in her zip
even
craft.
her seduction stuff is still forceful.
It's ham-fisted as hell.
Yes.
She's just like, I'm being the sexy vixen now. It's not like subtle.
Now, what's interesting is she has to turn off part of her humanity to do that. And so she ends up being in places that are, that have a lot of emotional turmoil, and she's dead to it. Because she has to be dead to it to operate by force like this. And here I'm thinking of both the way that bar was, right? Like, clearly she's capable of handling herself, but that's a really dangerous bar to get a tip.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, and she didn't necessarily have to go into the bar where all the guns are in order to get that tip if she just wanted to wait. But no, that's not who she is. And then the next tip on the line is even more striking, I think. She walks in on two people having sex, right? And like, there's no curiosity or empathy toward that at all.
No.
Just like gun in the mouth. And then, what are you saying? like she doesn't even sort of recognize the moment she's walked into at all.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And like, this is where I think it's at least interesting to add. This is in 1998. So like that scene was a little bit surprising at the time, I think.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, I think that was a little bit surprising. And she doesn't even comment on it, which is in itself kind of an interesting inclusion in this show. Right. Mm-hmm. So there, like, and what I take from that is a striking lack of empathy. A striking lack of curiosity. She's not curious at all. She's not empathetic at all. She has to shut all that down to get what she wants. And they have this perfect line that actually describes the difference between them right when she invades that shootout with her ship, by the way, not with a gun. She's using the ship guns to get through this shootout. And Spike says, couldn't we do this a little? She could be a little more delicate.
Right.
She could be a little more delicate is a perfect line about the difference in their philosophies.
Right. Because he's delicate. Because
he is
incarnate.
Delicate. Correct.
Yeah.
And she's not. You know?
Which is funny to say about bounty hunters who blast their way into cathedrals, but here we are, and there it is. Well, he operates himself in every way that way all the time, and with few cases, the exceptions.
It's really fun to see how little they are the person they look like. Faye does not look like what she is. Correct. Yeah. And neither Spike. Spike isn't who he looks like either.
No.
You know? Yeah, this is a well-drawn episode for character, even though it's not primarily an exploration of either of their characters.
Right. No, it's absolutely true.
Yeah.
I love that inspection. And Faye is going to become a lot more interesting as we go on, just because right now she's a little bit, I wouldn't call her fridged, you know, like, but we're taking a beat to do Spike first because he's the longer arc of the season.
He's the heart of the show.
She has her time in the sun. Yeah. So Jet as well. Jet, we haven't really chimed into his backstory. In fact, we've looked at it probably the least so far.
We've had allusions to it, and we also haven't even met the entire crew of the Bebop yet, which is like stunning for 8 episodes into the series.
The next episode will be Jamming with Edward, where we get our last piece. Yeah.
Interesting. All right. Well, knowing that, I think it's time for us to carry that weight.
This is where we discuss themes and zoom out a little bit and talk about this session's contribution to the larger narrative.
I think we launched off on that a little bit. Did you want to?
We kind of did. I had a specific, more like take of why this episode did what it did.
Sure.
And why I think that is key to like the specifically Spike's unlock, but also it introduces this new thing that is going to become one of the thematic like biggies in the show that we have yet to even, maybe we did a little bit when he talked to Lone Wolf, when he talked to the Native American shaman, we kind of touched upon it, but this is the first time we actually do it. And it's huge. It's huge for Spike, and it's huge for the series and you know, like what Bebop wants to say. And the way we get it is we get this concept through the water scene, but also through just Stella's story and her blindness. We get this big question that Bebop wants to ask all the time, which is sensory experience. Is that a reliable barometer of reality?
Oh,
right. Because this is something that Watanabe talks about a lot. he talks about how, and he's a huge fan of Zatoichi films. Do you know Zatoichi? That's the blind swordman kind of folklore.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Bruce Lee's teaching kind of stems from that. He's like, if you are ultimately present, like he talks about in Wing Chun, like you can block things without even using your eyes. And Stella, obviously, in the story, is blinded by spores on Venus, by her environment, the place she lives and loves. We get this first music box scene of so many music boxes in the show.
They're always connected to a tragic character.
And usually this theme.
And it's like a siren song for Spike.
It is.
I would argue. Yeah.
Because I think that there's something that we don't even know about him and Julia.
Yeah.
There's a lot of piano bars involved. So there's this feeling of like he sees her, Julia, as like a lullaby, which is kind of what all music boxes are. They evoke and that's something the series evokes as it goes on. Like the concept of life as a dream state, or living between dreaming and perception and not being able to decipher both. The music box is almost a talisman of that, because it's not only nostalgic for like a childhood, your past memories, dreams, but also, it is a textual sensory experience. It's sound. And the final aspect of the story,
it's sound and touch, what I mean? Because it's music that you have to actually make.
You have to make it.
Yeah.
You have to spin So the final aspect of the story, the first thing that Stella wants to see when she gets her eyes back is she wants to see Roko's face, because she's never seen it.
Yep.
And she's like, once I'm healed, that's the first thing I want to see. And that becomes the moment of the breakdown of the reality and the dream, right? There's this back and forth quote that I love that really, explains the theme, and it like Spike's place in it, which is, he asks her, what was he like? She asked him, what was he like? And his response is, you know better than anyone without looking. He was a terrific guy, exactly who you thought he was. And I love that concept of, even Spike is pretty hard. Like, he's pretty consistently answering the question the same way. There's instincts. There are things that you just know without sensory experience, without the need to look someone in the eye, without the need to hear their voice anymore. You just knew by their actions, by their vibe, who they were better than anyone could ever do. Not because you are blind, but because you are looking at something that is truer. And that truer aspect is something that comes out of the dream state, out of the, not our limited perception, but something deeper. And it's something that Spike is totally tied into. And I love that this is our introduction to that thought.
Do you think Spike told her the truth? Sounds like you do. That's the truth.
I do. I think he believes this too. It comes up several times. Jupiter Jazz, we have the same kind of deal.
Yeah, I think that's true too. I think Spike is instinctively drawn to people who are actually a light. Like they're lights in a dark place. I think that's who Spike wants to talk to and know. Like that's the common thread across all these like characters that he has these one-off interactions with, is that they sort of glimmer a little bit in the midst of, a bunch of maniacs who maybe don't.
Yeah. Also, it's very clear that almost all the people that are like Spike, like even VT in the last episode with Heavy Metal Queen.
Yeah.
All the people he meets are super intuitive.
Well, VT is very close to him. Like VT is like Spike, I think. Like they seem like equals in a lot of ways.
Right. There's only two true monsters that Spike like kind of witnesses in the run of the story, past obviously Vicious and some of the Syndicate people.
Yeah.
But like as far as the standalone episodes, we've met Wen.
Yeah, Wen
was an answer that could be solved.
Yeah.
For Spike.
Yeah.
Because he was super unintuitive. The other one is Pierre LeFou.
Yeah. Oh, man.
Which is the clown we meet later. Great episode. Probably one of my favorite episodes.
It's the one that people refer to for visual, like the visuals Cowboy Bebop.
It's straight out of Batman, the animated series. But it's fantastic because it confronts Spike with something he doesn't. This guy has this guy is just been designed to do a function. He is not intuitive. And Spike just does not know what to do with it. And if you look at every other character, you look at people we've met already before, all of the, people that he's sympathetic to, or people like VT who like have their own thing going on. These are all super intuitive people who actually kind of have the sixth sense that Spike has. They are the anti-Fae, in terms of like what you were saying.
That's why it's kind of interesting that you never see the scene where Fae, like I would think there'd be moments where Fae would actually be the right tool for the job. Like, I think if this series went on for like years and years, that there would be Pierre LeFou types, and it would turn out Fae is the right tool for this job, not Spike. Like in some ways, I know this can't be true, but in some ways, I think Faye is actually the right tool for Vicious. You know what I mean?
Totally.
Like she gets who he is. Yeah.
Because she's also like basically a teenager. She is still answering the question, who am I?
Yes.
And that who am I is a big thing where it's like that's where intuition is necessary. So she needs to solve that problem. She's thinking about these questions. So obviously she would be on that journey. And she does go on that journey.
Right.
But Spike already has his mind made up.
Yeah, Spike is, in some senses, like a coiled spring. And this whole series is him finally, launching. Like finally coming unspooled, right? And it's a beautiful thing to watch in that regard. Rarely do I get super invested in the world building. This episode invited it more, and I think successfully, because it foregrounded weird plot pieces of this world, but with absolutely no depth, in a way that I think is actually intriguing, right? So like you mentioned the helium thing, right? The helium thing reminds us, oh yeah, this would be a completely different environment and planet and a set of like lifestyle and set of rules and stuff.
Yeah, and you can see the architecture of the domes, and you're like, okay, that's different. At one point, there's a Turkish. Everything's like Turkish.
There's a Turkish vibe to it.
Yeah,
that like there's actually kind of a delicacy to it, like the silverware and china and stuff that he drinks the tea out of. That, as you said, is very Turkish. Also has this kind of this like sort of like everything is like that plant. It's very delicate. It can't take a lot of environment. It's got to be like cared for very specifically. That's kind of what Venus is. Like Venus is this place that's like, it's actually a little bit fragile and deadly because of its fragility. And we don't get a ton of stuff on Venus. This is I don't know if there's another episode on Venus in this series. This might be the only one. Yeah. So you have this story of delicacy, and I think in a way that sort of helps us understand the underlying emotional connection that was there between Stella and Rocco. Like that there was a kind of tenuous delicacy between them, where Rocco was allowed to be a criminal and allowed to get away with the life he did because she couldn't see him. Right. And so there was but there was this very fragile love between them that both of them worked to keep alive until the day that she could see. Like, I almost feel like in some way Rocco planned that the day she can see is the day I stop this life.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, it's a redemption day for both of us. You know what I mean? And so there's this kind of, there's this sort of very gentle, flimsy plan in place that one wrong move breaks it.
Just like a flower in its own atmosphere in a dome.
Exactly.
It's the most fragile thing in the world, but seeds are pretty hardy.
They are, but you don't get the feeling like and this, like, Spike and Faye don't feel like they're part of this world in the way they did feel like they're part of Mars, or they did feel like they're part of like the asteroid that looks like Tijuana,
right?
Wherever that is. Like they seem more grounded in places like this. Here, they definitely felt like they were kind of breaking open the world to try to understand what is going on, but never felt like a part of it, integrated in the same way.
I think that's intentional. I think there's a reason why you don't feel the urbanness like you do with Mars and other planets like this. There's a homage clearly to like Istanbul and stuff, but like you don't see the wide swaths of people walking, minding their own business. We are very we arrive
We're very
at Stella's
focused.
place. You know, we go to a bar and it's dingy and very barely visible. There's reasons for that.
We don't even really see the casino. Like,
No.
like this would be a fun place to have a scene. Like, what is the casino on Venus like? And a lot of other episodes, we'd get that.
What's it
This
like
one
to
we
be on the plant, to live on a plant?
Right,
Like we see it, wide shots of it. We never on one though, it seems. That also, your atmosphere stuff reminds me something that was in the show notes. There's this book that if you can actually track down, if you love this stuff like I love this stuff, it's called 3, 2, 1, Let's Jam by Satoru Stevenson.
Abe was so pumped on this.
Yeah, it's basically the unofficial and unauthorized guide of the original Cowboy Bebop. It's hard to get. I would suggest trying to get the paperback instead of the hardcover, just because you have to buy it from the UK. Anyway, there was something that they were noticing in this, or something that there was a conversation between, I think it was like one of the composers was talking about, if a music box were to play in this atmosphere, it would ruin the scene, right? Because the sound it would make would not be cogent with the mood, because the sound would be affected by the helium. It would be the super high pitched, like thing, which is funny to think about. But she's also like, but also we don't care about the scientific stuff. Last episode we had, Spike jumping around, so
no, they do enough to create an interesting situation.
Right. Yeah.
And then they leave the rest in the background because they're like,
exactly.
Do you really care? No.
Yeah.
Why should we? Why should we really care?
You don't have to be all the things. It's sci-fi. You don't have to get all the things right.
No.
Hyperspace exists, who gives a fuck?
But in this very limited way,
when you do pay attention to the little things, the small gestures, with these, may or may not be scientifically accurate, but they feel founded, maybe speciously, but they feel founded in terms of someone thought about this and it makes sense. There's a sense that you can be made out of it. That feels like that's how you world build, right?
There's a lot of decisions about things that are loud decisions, but they feel grounded because they're specific. Mm-hmm. And also, Cowboy Bebop understands something that a lot of science fiction things don't, which is the actual world we live in is an amalgamation of a lot of different technologies and cultures that are growing and existing simultaneously at different speeds. So on the one hand, maybe your cyber kitchen is pretty up to date, but you still but then, because of the area of town you live in, you're still using an outhouse. You know what I mean? Just that thing that is actually true about your life. Your life right now has this mix of very old technology, right? And then some really brand new stuff. And I think Cowboy Bebop really seamlessly creates a world that feels there's flying cars and shit, but we still need pocket knives. We have these digital screens that are like holograms. So obviously our computers are crazy impressive, but what do we still use to listen to music? Music boxes, the analog. Right, exactly. And that is true about the world. The world is not a monolith. Technology and the way culture is not monolithic. It's a fusion of a lot of things, some of which never left. Some of them didn't get updated as fast as others.
Right.
And that makes the world feel more real. And it eliminates questions. Why does this look like Tijuana? I don't know. Because, this is perhaps
that's a place it could look like.
Yeah, it could.
And let's think about that. How would that influence how it looks?
Right.
What's the trajectory of things in Tijuana? Yeah.
It's just a smart thing that it takes a very open-minded person to think of the look that way. Because most filmmakers, and I include myself in this, are really trying to narrow in on the look is one thing. The world looks like this one thing, right? It's this color palette and these kind of lights and this kind of design and everything looks like that. And Cowboy Bebop, it isn't one thing. It's all the things, but just sort of through a very broad grid. And I think it's a very successfully designed show in that regard. Abe, I've talked about all the things that I had in my brain to say.
The only thing I want to say is that if you did enjoy this is episode 8. I don't know why you wouldn't know that. If you're watching along with us, our next episodes will be 9, Jamming with Edward, and 10, Ganymede Eulogy. Those will be the two we record next.
Those are good.
Which will come out in the next 2 weeks to 3 weeks. We rarely mention, and I don't know if you're watching the Perfect Sessions like I am, the like DVD box set, but they include the, after Real Folk Blues plays and the credits roll, they have like interstitial like, up next episode kind of thing. And this is the first time we hear Ed's voice, and I just wanted to call it out because I love Ed so much.
Edward is the moment where this thing really gets anime.
Yeah,
and
he's
for some people, Edward really really shifts the tone of the show in a new direction.
Yeah.
I would argue after we get a big healthy dose of Edward, it kind of stabilizes a bit. But it's a lot. Edward's a lot.
In this one, it's not an eye catch. I guess it's just like a preview. Edward's like, "Hi, this is Edward. My name is Edward Wong Hao Pepaloo Trevusky IV," which is a name that they've given themselves. And it's perfectly the cherubic energy that I can't wait to dive into with you.
Great.
If you want to see other things or browse other podcasts that either Adam and I are on, please do at patreon.com/smallbeans. That's where most of our stuff exists. Only about a third to a half of what we actually do is on the free feeds. So if you want to unlock a lot of our shows,
One-Upsmanship,
I would argue some of our best shows.
Escape from the Multicurse is in the paid feed, I want to say.
I mean, and we have One-Upsmanship, we have, which is video games with this guy and Michael Swaim. We also have Spielboys, which is Tom Ryman and I. We have Star Trek Next Futurama, which is Michael Swaim and Dave Bell. These are all shows that you can't really get. Sometimes we make an episode free for the free feed, but most of the time it's under our Patreon feed. So please check that out if you're interested at all. If not, enjoy your business and enjoy the show.
Enjoy your business. Please enjoy your sweet business.
Abe Horny.